So yesterday we went over some basic information about iMapInvasives and the beginnings of how to use the tool. And today we're going to get into a little bit more depth. Most of the time this morning we're going to spend in live demo. And then we've got two folks who are going to walk us through some alternate workflows for sitting down to kind of get data into iMapInvasives. So there are a number of ways to take data in the field that can set you up to enter data into iMapInvasives. So as we discussed, there's no upload of shapefiles or GPS tracks directly into iMapInvasives. However, GPS tracks or waypoints can assist you in preparing to enter information into iMapInvasives. And so Maddie Eberly, my conservation aide, is going to talk through how to use Avenza maps, and Joe Dembeck is going to talk through use of GPS files and Google Earth to assist in those processes. But first, we're going to go over a few more things about iMapInvasives and spend some more time on live demo. So just to reiterate before I go further, iMapInvasives is a program where we can map information from public lands and private lands with permission of the landowner. And I just want to note that the application form that landowners fill out to get an invasive plant control practice plan does include giving permission to map information into iMapInvasives. So that detail is part of the application form. And so when the landowner accepts that and signs that, that is our permission for mapping their information into iMapInvasives. So to make maps from iMap data, there are two things that you can do. Well, there's probably more than two things, but these are two things that that I'm going to mention right now. Number one is you can take a screen capture or a screenshot from iMap and place that into a PowerPoint template that we have created and that we have posted on the Forester and other natural resources professionals resources page. Jan or Andy, if you would be so kind as to please share the link to the PowerPoint template, that would be great. So this image you can see here was made in that PowerPoint template. This is a screenshot from iMapInvasives, cropped to fit the slide with notes added. And so the beauty of PowerPoint is that you can add all kinds of things. You can add text, you can add text boxes, you can add little arrows to point at things. You can add text here if you want to make a note about something. So in the example plans, you'll see how I personally have done that and how in example plan 2, how another individual has done that. Another way, number 2 here, that you can make maps from iMap data is to export the confirmed iMap data into ArcGIS or some other mapping software. So data from iMap are exportable, and we'll go over that today. So you are not limited to this format. This format is quick and relatively easy, but you're also welcome to make a fancier cartographic map by exporting data from iMap into some other software. So that's kind of a nuts and bolts. I want to refer you to the iMap online help resources. So there are several places where you can find these. There is the www.imapinvasives.org website. And on the right, you're seeing a screen capture from that website showing the user manual page under help and resources. Excuse me. So this is a great resource for any initial questions you may have. There are some more detailed recorded webinar trainings done by the iMap partners in New York State. And these can be found at www.nymapinvasives.org. So www.nymapinvasives.org. And there's a training and webinars section or something like that. So if you just want something relatively quick, you can look at the iMapInvasives.org. And if you can't, if you're not finding what you want there, I encourage you to look at the New York page. New York has a very robust program where they've got numerous people dedicated to supporting their iMapInvasives website. So they have some good resources. that, I'm going to transition to live demo. So this is my list of things to cover. Bear with me while I stop presenting that screen and I start presenting my iMap screen. Okay, so here we are in iMapInvasives, and I have zoomed to the state of Maine. And so yesterday we covered how to navigate on the map using these buttons, the navigation buttons on the left. We also covered the iMap menu at the top left, where you can manage your account, you can request to be added to a project or an organization, you can navigate to the iMap help resources, or you can log out. We also talked about the layers on the right-hand side, where you can show the legend, you can turn layers on and off, etc. You can change your base maps. Today, I'm going to go over the more of the action buttons that are on the top right of iMapInvasives. We used some of the tools in the Create Record button yesterday, and I'm going to come back to that button in a minute to talk more about how to enter data. But before that, I want to call your attention to the other buttons here. So the Find Record button is for when you already have a record in iMapInvasives that you're trying to locate. And so the most typical way to do this is with the record ID. So you may remember that yesterday, after I created some data, it showed me the record ID. And so if I had the record ID for something, I would type it in here and it would find that record. It's as simple as that. It would zoom to the record and it would show up in a little table at the bottom of the screen. So that's a useful tool if you write down your record ID numbers. The Filter Records button is a super useful tool. When you click it, it opens this dialog. And this allows you to do a lot of different things. So you can say, just show me my records, which is a quick way to look for only your records. I'm going to untoggle that because I would like to demonstrate some other things. You can look for records entered by a particular observer. You can look for records entered by species name. And you can choose whether you want to select the species name from the all network species or from the main species. So just be aware that the default here is the species list that is used by the entire iMapInvasives network. And so, for example, some of the common names that are used in other parts of the country may not be the same as what we use in Maine. And so the main list, the main species list, is the more tailored list for our area. So when searching for a species name, I recommend that you toggle for the main species list. If you're searching using the species list, the all network species list, you should be able to find it, but it might not come, it might just be under a different common name. So it might take a little bit more noodling to find it. So just be aware. And then there are a variety of other things you can search by here. So habitat type, kingdom, genus, records before and after certain dates. This can be really useful to help visualize change over time. So you can say, I only want to see the records as of this year, so that you can see what's going on this year as opposed to what went on last year. You can search by organization or you can search by project. And so numerous ways here to filter on the map. So for example, let's say we wanted to search for the species distribution of giant hogweed. And we can and I'll be honest, I actually am not sure if we have any records of this species in Maine, so bear with me. I'm going to click Apply Filter, and the little wheel spins, and we wait. And then what you can do is you can either minimize the records box, or you can close the records box. So I'm going to close it. Notice that the box is still green. So see how that little funnel thing is still green, whereas nothing else on the top here is green. So that means my filter is still in place. So as you can see, we filtered and there's a lot less on the map right now. So if I wanted to know more about these records, I can, again, hold the Shift button down and draw on the map to zoom right into my rectangle. And as I zoom in, it's going to first show everything, and then it's applying the filter. And so I'm going to zoom in again by drawing a box. And we'll see what we've got here. Now I'm sort of vaguely remembering that somebody had reported some giant hogweed in Saka. As you can see, sometimes the interwebs take longer than others. This one's being a little slow. While that's thinking, I'm going to talk about the Identify Measure button. So the Identify Measure button allows you to do some cool stuff. So if you just need to know the size of an area, it allows you to draw on the map and double click to finish, and it will tell you the size of the area in a variety of different units. So this can be a super useful tool. It will also measure distance. So again, if you're trying to determine how far it is to do something, you have a variety of measurement tools there. And then okay, so this seems to have really failed. I don't know what's taking so long. So I'm going to zoom back to Maine because we don't really have time for that right now. We can also use, so I'm going to clear my filter records by clicking Clear Filter. And now you'll see that the filter tool is no longer green, so we know that it is not filtering anything. And I'm going to go back to Identify Measure, but first I'm going to zoom to something. So let's zoom in to Pondicherry Park. Which is where my field site was yesterday. Okay, so we've zoomed into Bridgeton, and Pondicherry Park is this area in here. And I'm waiting for this thing to draw. I'm going to also turn on any unconfirmed present species in case anyone mapped that yesterday. If you are having performance issues with iMapInvasives where you feel like things are just interminably slow, the first thing to try is always clearing your browser cache and relaunching. And if it persists, drop me an email. It does happen from time to time that the NatureServe servers, are having a bad day or they're performing some maintenance or something like that. It is not usually this slow, so I'm a little bit annoyed that this is happening in my training. But all of our various web-based tools sometimes have little hiccups and glitches. But I'm going to proceed. So you can use the Identify Measure tool to see what's here in an area. So what you do is you draw your box around the area of interest, and you finish drawing your box, and then you double click to finish. And you can use this button, See What's Here, to ask iMapInvasives to report to you what is present in the area of interest. And I'm just thinking that this is probably also going to hang. So I wonder whether I should actually ask Maddie and Joe to do their talks and maybe come back to iMap since we're having this problem.
Nancy, this is Greg
Yeah.
Lord.
Yes, Greg.
Maybe try just turning off your camera might help the bandwidth a little. Just a
Thank
suggestion.
You. That's a great suggestion, Greg. I appreciate that. So while the little wheel is still spinning, the other tool that I'll show you is the Export Report tool. So this tool allows you to export data from iMap in several different formats. CSV format, which is like a basic version of an Excel file. Geodatabase, which is a Esri ArcGIS format. Shapefile, which is also a format that can be used in Esri ArcGIS as well as some other programs. So these are the formats you can export in. Okay, so my Identify Measure results has finished, but it says that no features were found, which I know is not true because there are things mapped at Pondicherry. So it does seem like iMap is having some kind of a bad day. So this is where you would go to create an export of data. And you can have the current filter turned on if there is one. I don't have a filter right now, so this button is grayed out. And you can either export using the current map extents, in other words, whatever is visible within your screen, or if you want to define or select a boundary area, you can do that using this custom area. So I'm not going to go through that, but you can either draw on the map or you can select a town or you can select a county or something like that. So that's the export tool. There are also reports in here, several different types of reports, such as infested area and area treated. So the infested area report will return you a full list of the number of point records and the area of polygon records within a box that you draw or within a defined boundary area. So it's a nice report if you want, if you like, you're a property manager and you want to create a snapshot of what's known for your property. So I use this sometimes when on BPL properties that I help manage invasive plants on to get a quick snapshot of what's mapped on the property. Again, you can use this in concert with a filter to get a pretty precise timing, because sometimes there's, multiple years of activity on the property, and maybe you just want to show what's been mapped recently. So a couple of important reports. Okay, so I am going to ask iMap to reload, and we'll see if that solves the problem. And if not, I think I'm gonna try something different. Okay. So let me try, well, I think what we're gonna do is, I really wanted to show you all some create record stuff. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop sharing this and I'm gonna go back to sharing the PowerPoint. And Maddie and Joe, Joe and then Maddie, I'd like to ask you to be ready to give your talks a little earlier because um, that was not working so great in iMap, and maybe we'll come back to that. So we want to talk about other tools to assist with data entry workflow. So thanks for your patience with our technical difficulties. What we're going to do now is I'm going to invite Joe Dembeck to talk a little bit about using Google Earth with your handheld GPS to assist with iMap data entry. Joe, are you with us?
I am right here and ready to go.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Joe. Take it away. And Joe, so I have allocated about 10 minutes for your talk.
Okay, I'll watch the timer. So folks, this is just a really simple intermediary step that I use to help visualize when I'm doing my data entry into iMapInvasives. So what I'm going to go through is just how I take our data sheet, my data sheets, my GPS points, and how I use that to create a map that really lets me put in the data into iMap in for me, a quicker manner. Nancy, the next slide. So we all have data sheets. We also usually use in the field a different data sheet too, but in this example I'm using, this is a property we surveyed last year. I used all the margins, as you can see, of my maps, all kinds of noting on the map itself of block areas that were infested and stuff. We all have our different ways of how we collect data. I'm inherently dubious of electronic devices, so I put all the data I can on my data sheets. And for me, the most important thing is identifying a waypoint and the information with it, be it the species, the age class, if it's vegetative, flowering, fruiting, those aspects. So this is all my rough field data from spending a day in the field. Next slide. Next slide, Nancy. Oops, sorry. So I also take in the field, of course, I'm taking GPS points I'm using a Garmin unit. So you see that here. Those points can correspond to a single plant that we found in one area, say 630 there, waypoint 630. It could mark the bounds of field edges with infestations. There's all the field notes associated with this. But what this lets me do is when I put this up there, I can look at my field data sheets of various forms, look at this map when I print it off or have it on another computer while I'm actively working in iMap. I don't have to toggle back and forth. It's just a methodology that works for me to show it versus trying to just look at data sheets and displaying it. And the next slide kind of brings it all together. We all have different methodologies on how we map data and our intermediary processes like I just showed, but this is the final result for this property with all the different infestations mapped on this. You could see we didn't take data points for that great big block of green in the middle. That's because on the map image I had in my coworker, Jennifer had taken and outlined that because it was pretty easy. It's a planted spruce stand that was infested with bittersweet and shrubby honeysuckle throughout. So it's something that we could determine right off the bat after walking some transects through there that this is a polygon. It's pretty uniform in what it was. We're not going to put a ton of data points in there. Other locations, like on the far left, west of the screen, are small patches of honeysuckle in an area that really doesn't have any infestation. So those were points with field notes that said 25 meter radius for a honeysuckle infestation, 10-meter radius, and so on. It's just something that allows me, and it may be helpful to other folks, to visualize when you're entering on the iMap invasive screen. Any
Great.
critique, thoughts, questions?
Joe, I'm just gonna ask if you would say what tool you use to transfer your data between your GPS unit and Google Earth.
Yep. If I can share my screen, Nancy, I actually have a little live demo I can do.
Yes, great. Let me stop sharing.
So this is a large view with the property that I just showed in the PowerPoint slides present. So as people can see the screen, when I want to bring in that data from that day's field surveys, I go up to the upper left toolbar, hit Tools, GPS. This little dialog box will appear. I'm using a Garmin unit. If you are taking it directly from the unit, you can do that. I've already downloaded it to my desktop, so I'm going to say Import from File. And you can do this for waypoints, tracks, routes. This is just a waypoint file. I found the file, I clicked on it, hit OK after it's loaded, and then I can zoom in to the property in question, and here are the same data points we saw on the PowerPoint. It's real simple and easy. I can then either just leave this on a second computer screen while I'm working on another computer with iMap, or I can just go up and real easily just hit this icon, which kind of creates a map of this current screen. Hit Save Image. I can put any data I want into the dialog boxes there. I'm just going to call this example 1. It saves as a JPEG. I hit Save. It's saved. So now I can go onto my desktop anytime to open up that image, to view it, to print it off, whatever. To me, it's a very simple way of doing it. If you have multiple days of field work on a property, your GPX files, your waypoint files, will be based upon the date. So you can actually import several different files at one time to get all your data points on one map.
Great. Thanks so much, Joe, for walking us through that. It's super useful. I know people have been in the chat just sort of asking questions about how different folks do different things. Maddie, I am going to bring back up our PowerPoint with the iMap Bootcamp Avenza map slides that you had created. And if you would unmute yourself and prepare to talk through use of Avenza maps.
All right, sounds good. So hello everyone. I apologize if you hear large trucks passing. I'm right on the road and they can be kind of noisy. But so Avenza tools or Avenza maps can be downloaded in the App Store. If you advance to the next slide here, Nancy. Yeah, so it can be downloaded in the App Store and it's just for phones or tablets. It's a free download. There is like a paid pro version, but for just taking basic data points, you don't need anything too fancy. Also, I should mention here, as a state employee, I can't endorse any specific like app or program, but this is what I personally use. When you open up the program, so the image that's kind of in the center of the slide there with the big red circle around the Orno map. So when you download an app, which you can do at that orange circle with the plus sign, or sorry, at the store, or you can you can import a map that you already have. So if you have a geo-referenced PDF, you can import that using that plus sign in the orange circle, or you can download maps that are free. Some of them are paid in the store icon just below that. So all of your maps would show up in this view here where it says My Maps is what's selected there. And down in the center, there's layers. So once we go through just kind of like when you collect like your tracks or your waypoints, you can go into your layers and you can export them directly from there. But I'll show you how to do that within the map view as well. So when you click on your map, it opens up to the image there on the right. And you got a whole bunch of options for searching, and that little eye at the top is a good help spot. But down at the bottom is where all the functions are for the most part. So on the far left, there's kind of like a little scope, and you can use that to find your actual location on the map. If you're not physically located within the bounds of the map, it will tell you that. And the next one there is like a little pin. And so when you're collecting a waypoint, that is, or a data point, a waypoint, that is what you select, and we'll go through that as well in more detail. And the center shows some coordinates that's the scope that you see there on the map. That locates where exactly you're looking on the map with coordinates. And to the right of that is another pin with 3 horizontal lines. And so that will show a list of everything that you've recorded in that layer. So that'll be like your tracks and your waypoints, anything other that you record in there. And the 3 dots that are stacked on the far right just give you some further options there. Let's see. So yeah, it's a variety of different options. And so if we advance to the next slide here. All right. So when you click that little bar that was above the coordinates, sorry, I didn't point that out on the previous slide. I can go back for a second here. So there's that little gray bar there. So if you select that or drag it up, it pulls up this menu that shows up on the next slide here. So there's 3 different pages that you can see here: location, tracking, navigation. So the location, that gives you, where you are, your altitude, and kind of gives you an estimate of accuracy. And on the tracking option, there's the option to start a track. So you can record where you walk, which on the map you saw on the previous slide has 3 different tracks on it already. So you can start and stop, and then you can further edit the tracks to change the color or label them a different way. And the third is the navigation. So you can navigate with it. So there's the different options there. I personally haven't utilized this tool at all, so I can't really expand on it too much, but I know it can be very helpful for finding specific points in your field if you're looking for like a plot center, that sort of thing. All right, if we can go on to the next slide. All right, so when you are making your waypoints, or place marks, or what they're called in the app here, so you click that pin down at the bottom, of the map there. Yep. And so it'll give you a whole bunch of options. It'll automatically put in the coordinates for where you're standing when you take that waypoint. So for the case of mapping invasive species, the title, that should be, you know, what you're observing. The symbol down below that, you can change it to whatever suits you. And the photos below, you can take that directly in the app, or you can upload photos when you click that little image symbol there. So that's where you get the options for taking a photo or uploading a photo. And this is where you'd upload, have a photo there for a key identification for your invasive species that you're looking at, or the extent of the infestation, that sort of thing. And the description down below, you can add in your details, like if there's like any significant things near the site, like an old homestead, or you're near a trail or near a road, or any other important details you want to add in. That's where a good spot to put that. And then there's, when you scroll to the bottom, you can save it, and it puts you back on the map. And so then you see that pin with the 3 horizontal lines. And when you select that, it goes to the layers. And then you'll see every single point that you took. And you can individually go into those and make further edits or whatever else you need to do with that. So then there's that orange circle with the 3 horizontal lines. And when you select that, if we move on to the next slide here, so it gives you the option to export or import layers if you have something you want to bring in. But if you click the export layers, and then the center image here gives you all these different options. So you can change the name of the file there at the top. And then down below that, you can choose the format for exporting. The free version, you can only do KML, CSV, or GPX. But depending on what program you're using, that should be fine, most likely. And you can specify what features you want to have in the data, and change the image size, that sort of thing. So when you click export at the top right, it'll give you an option for how to share it. So you can, I usually use Gmail or my Google Drive to share things, but whatever connections you have on your phone or tablet, that's what will be available to you for sharing. But also to note, just with iMap, the way that iMap works, if you use Avenza, you're probably going to have to individually put in records. So this is when that layer window, I guess, would be the best thing to look at, because you can go individually into things down the list and find the coordinates and then enter it into iMap, which I think Nancy will be showing us here after I finish talking. So that's a useful way to use this tool when working directly with iMap. But if you're just mapping it for your own use, you can just export the file. So I think that's all I have to say on that.
Thanks so much, Maddie. That's excellent. Can I just clarify, you said a minute ago that you thought that this layer interface might be a good way to present the information to then enter it into iMap. Did I understand correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you have that layer file open, you can click on each place mark that you took, and that'll open up a window similar to what's on the left, that you can go in and see each individual location. I find it's easiest to just have like that pulled up on your phone while you're entering things on like a laptop or a desktop, and just it's a easier way to be organized, I think.
Yeah, everyone's going to have their own preferences. It sounds like you could do it this way, working strictly from your device, or you could also, as you noted here in the next slide, export this, and you'd be able to create effectively from the exported file something like what Joe showed a few minutes ago, like this. Is that right, Maddie?
Yeah, you'd have to have like a mapping program such as Google Earth or GIS.
Yep, but I think so with a KML file, I'm pretty sure, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure you could do this like what Joe has shown. So multiple ways to use Avenza maps to set yourself up to do iMap data entry. Thank you so much, Joe and Maddie, for that great introduction to those tools. So I'm going to stop presenting this screen, and we're all going to cross it. Everybody, please cross your fingers and toes now as I go back into iMapInvasives, and hopefully whatever small technical difficulties the iMap website was having will be resolved. So we're back in Bridgeton here at Pondicherry Park, which was the site of my field site yesterday. And I want to try to show the Identify Measure tool. So I've grabbed the Identify Measure tool and I chose, sorry, I went kind of quickly there. So I grabbed this tool and I'm going to select the area type of measurement. And I'm going to draw on the map and double click to finish. And then I'm going to click See What's Here. And it hopefully is going to go a bit faster than last time. Oh boy. Everybody's got their toes crossed, right? This doesn't, yeah. So I saw in the comment while Joe was presenting, somebody said, "Oh, it's good that you're showing us this so that we'll know what's not normal and what is normal." So that length of response time, you know, it's not totally unacceptable, but it's not normal. Normally it goes faster than that. But anyway, you can see that it has returned the records within the area that I drew. So that is a way to use the Identify Measure tool to understand better what's in an area. And if there were numerous records here, you would be able to scroll up and down in this table. You could sort by common name. So obviously right now it's not so important because you can see them all, but you could sort them so that you could quickly scroll through and learn what species are in the area. So that's a tool that I use frequently, and I just wanted to introduce that tool. All right, so the heart of iMap data entry, coming back to the Create Record tool. Yesterday, we demonstrated the simple presence workflow. Today, I'm going to demonstrate the multi-record searched area workflow, which is a workflow that's going to step you through a more complicated, or I should say, a more thorough data entry workflow. So the first thing it asks you to do is draw your searched area. And if you remember, the searched area is what we're using to represent our surveyed acres on our client properties. And so this is one of the required layers that you will be asked to show on a map. So for the purpose of helping me to draw this here at Pondicherry, I'm going to turn on the conservation lands layer. And so the searched area here is definitely a polygon. And I'm going to turn on the satellite imagery to help me exclude this area of fields. And I'm going to do this rather quickly today. Obviously, if I was doing this for real, I would go a little bit slower, but I'm just going to do sort of a rough job here. I'm going to exclude that little dog leg, and I'm going to exclude the field here. And there we go. So there's my searched area. And if I wanted to redraw that or I wanted to edit it, I could click one of these buttons and the vertices become editable here. And this, when I'm happy, I click save. And I can, if you wanted to completely redraw, if you wanted to say, I'll start over, then you could click redraw. But I'm happy, so I'm going to click next. And now it prompts me to add new presence records. So this is locations in which you found one or more species. So I am going to get ready to do that. I've got some notes from my field notebook, and I'm going to add my first presence record. So I've got some coordinates for the frangula allness that some sharp eyes found yesterday. So I got 44.0529 and negative 70.7087. And I'm going to submit. Okay, so that frangula allness or glossy buckthorn was outside of the searched area. This will need to be resolved before record completion. Okay, so I am going to continue. And that was a frangula allness or glossy false buckthorn, and it was observed yesterday. And I'm going to tag that into my Maine Forest Service Invasive Plant Management Program. This is where I would add my photo. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip that step today. We found only one of those. And I'm going to go next. And now it asks if you found anything else. And so I'm going to say, yes, we did find some other things. And so I am going to enter the coordinates for some other things. So I'm going to enter coordinates for some of the common buckthorn that we found yesterday. Okay. Okay, and that it also thinks is outside of my drawn area, which is fine. I was a little sloppy when I drew. So we're going to call this Rhamnus cathartica. And there was also in that same location some Rosa multiflora. And I am going to skip adding any additional detail at this time. And I'm going to add another presence record. And this time I'm going to add a polygon presence record. And so now I need to zoom in more closely because I'm going to utilize the feature of ArcMap that allows me to use my cursor to find my latitude and longitude. So I know the general area that we were in. We were in this section of the property where we saw some very bad thickets of Japanese barberry and common or European barberry, as well as burning bush and some shrubby honeysuckles. So I'm going to move my cursor around so that I can find my, my location, looking at my coordinates. So I've homed in on the latitude, and now I need to work on the longitude. So what I want to do is I want to come over. Let's see, so I'm 7109. And 50, well, I'm close. So I'm drawing my polygon based on my coordinates. Okay, so I just drew my polygon. I'm going to click next, and now I need to tell it what species were present in this area. And so Euonymus alatus was present, as well as Berberis. Both species of Berberis were present. And it remembered that I was surveying on the 19th. It remembered that I'm tagging these records into that project, so I don't have to repeat that process. Again, I would add photos here. And so now these are polygon species. It's asking me for percent cover class estimates. And I must admit, these are going to be totally just me making some data up here because I didn't write this stuff down. So I'm just going to choose some percent cover estimates for these plants. This is not a required field in iMap, but I do strongly suggest that you choose a percent cover class for polygons so that we can see progress over time as things are suppressed. We click the next button. And it says, well, okay, so you've got a few presence records. Is there anything else that you found? And so for the sake of time today, I'm not going to go through all the rest of the things that we found at Pondicherry Park yesterday. But what I am going to do next so I'm not going to click this button to add another presence record. I'm going to go next. And now it asks me about treatment records. And since we didn't do any significant treatment yesterday, I know that there was some pulling of various things going on, but I'm going to go ahead to the next screen. And now it's asking me about not detected species. And so this is where I can use the not detected species shape to indicate our track. So again, this is a way that you can this is kind of a backdoor way to use iMapInvasives to show your track by drawing a track in the not detected section of the workflow. So there were several species that we were capable to detect, but we did not find them yesterday at Pondicherry Park. For example, autumn olive, as well as garlic mustard. So those were in our search image, and there were, appropriate habitats present, but we did not find those species. So those are the species. The observer was myself, the date, the project, etc. And I'm going to click next. Okay, so, okay, right. Okay, so in fact, okay. Sorry, folks. So what I just did was, in effect, I have created a not detected record that matches my searched area, which is fine. So that's just me misremembering the order of operations here. So we're going to edit the searched area to resolve the errors that are noted. And then I'll show you how to create the track in a separate not detected record. So again, I just forgot the order of operations here in this data entry workflow. I must confess that I have intern help with most of my data entry, so this is not something that I do all the time, so bear with me. So we can edit our searched area record to make sure that it encompasses the records that we have entered. And again, I was sort of sloppy with my drawing this morning, so I clicked the edit button, and now I am going to hopefully edit. Oh, still thinking. That's what's going on here. Still thinking. So much data. All right, so hopefully at this time, yeah. Oops, didn't get it. There we go. And I think that those were the only two records that fell outside of the searched area. Yep. Okay, so now I'm going to save. And that seems to have resolved the error. There's no more error message here. Great. So again, this is the summary screen, which you come to at the end of your data entry workflow. And the first thing that I drew was the searched area record, which is to represent your surveyed acres. So that is shown in yellow, and it represents the eligible acres on the property. So I excluded the core of the field. And that shape allows us to know the acres that were effectively searched by the team. And just to be clear, our field site visit yesterday did not actually search all of these acres. So in reality, I probably should have drawn a slightly smaller polygon, but for the purpose of this demonstration, it's okay. If you were actually setting out to survey Pondicherry Park, you'd need more than one afternoon, but that's just an illustration of how to draw this record in this workflow. And then I drew presence records, which are shown in red, and those included several points as well as some polygons. And those are all listed here. And you could edit the details by clicking on the edit button at the top of this section. If you needed to edit anything, if you forgot to attach a photo, if you forgot to write some notes, if you forgot to add a species to your polygon record, you could edit that. But if you're happy with what you, and then there is a not detected record, which covers the entire searched area where we did not detect autumn olive or garlic mustard. So if I click complete now, that's going to save the data and hopefully give me my presence IDs, etc. Your record has been saved. And so it's showing us the new record ID numbers and the not detected record. So I'm going to close that window. And now I'm going to show you how to create the not detected record that can be your buffered, your track, your survey route. So to do that, I am going to turn off some of the data that is now showing on the map. So when we saved that workflow, it turned on a bunch of things. So it turned on searched areas, it turned on not detected species, it turned on all this other stuff. So I'm gonna turn some of those off for the purposes of drawing our route. And I'm going to leave the conservation lands layer on, but I'm going to increase the transparency of it just to help me. And now I am going to draw a line. So the way that I and my team do this is that we have a window of iMapInvasives open, and we either have another window open in another program such as Google Earth or Avenza Maps, or you could do it in ArcGIS, ArcMap. And I look at the track as it's recorded in that program, and then I take my cursor and I begin to replicate that track to the best of my ability on this map. And so understanding that that is not going to be 100% perfect, that is what we do. Someday when iMap comes out with a more fancy app, that will get better. But for now, and the advantage of doing this after you've done a data entry workflow is that you can see all your points and presences on the map, and so that can also help you draw your track. So I know that we went in here, we climbed up through this mixed pine stand, we followed the trail, which curves around a little bit, and then comes out here into the field. We passed by some already recorded points of swallowwort and Gallia malugo, smooth bedstraw, in that field. And we continued along the red trail down here. We intersected with the yellow trail, which looks like it might have been following this old road. And we came back down toward the river, and we actually walked out to this point, and then we circled back and continued back and back out. So I'm going to end my track there. And that is a way that we can record our track on the map. If you needed to edit that, you could do so. It would show you vertices and you could tweak them. I'm going to choose next. And because we're entering this in a not detected record, it wants to know, what species did you not detect here? And so since the purpose of this shape is really actually, we're sort of, again, using a backdoor way here. It's not super, it's not really to report not detected species. It's sufficient to indicate, one species in here. So again, we did not detect any autumn olive at this site. So I'll choose that. And again, the date of this, since I'm not in the same workflow anymore, it didn't remember the date. I got to tell it the date, and it didn't remember the project. I got to tell it the project. And I'm going to click next. And it's showing me the summary screen again, where I have another chance to edit. If I click this little eyeball, that just highlights the thing on the screen. So if you had like in the complicated workflow that I showed a minute ago, where there were many, many things in the summary screen, you can use this eyeball to toggle things in a highlighted color so you can see what's what within your searched area. I'm going to click complete, and my record has been saved. So that is, I think, what I wanted to be sure to cover this morning in the second part of boot camp. Let's see. So we covered the multi-record searched area workflow, entering the searched area within that workflow, entering the survey route as a not detected record, Okay, so the only other thing that I have not covered that I need to cover this morning is the screenshot maps. So I showed you a slide with the map as it was created. And what I'd like to show now is the way I make a screenshot map from iMapInvasives. So if you wanted, for example, to show our surveyed acres and our track, we could do that by showing our not detected and our searched areas on the map here. So we can see that our track is visible here. You can play with the transparency of these things to help distinguish them. So let's see, that's the transparency of the searched area. So let's see, does this help if I do? Yeah, that's a little bit better. And you can, so I'm going to zoom into the area where we really actually searched so that that'll be a bit more front and center in the map. And another trick that sometimes is useful is that you can take screenshots while you're in progress with your data entry workflow when things are showing up one at a time on the screen. And that can be a nice way to take a screenshot to put into the PowerPoint presentation. So I'm just going to wait for the little wheel to stop spinning. So on a PC computer, if you choose Control Alt Print Screen from your keyboard, you get a screen capture image. And let's see, I need to quickly open up the template file. Bear with me 1 minute. Writing materials, maps template. Okay, and I'm going to stop sharing, start sharing. Still opening my files. All right, here we go. And I'm going to start sharing this screen. Oh, I think I was already sharing. Sorry, gosh. Here we go. Okay. So I have taken a screen capture image and I can use the crop tool to get rid of these extra headings. And then I could add my notation and anything else that I wanted to put on this map. So I'm going to pause there and stop screen sharing. I realized that that was a lot in a short amount of time. So I may have just raised my hand by accident. Let's clear that. Yep. So goodness gracious, stop raising. Yes, lower hand. Okay. So Jan, can you help me out? Are there any questions in the chat?
Lots of conversation about Maddie's information about GPS. I'm just going to leave that. Let's see. Kind of actually starting from the bottom here, question from Sammy. I understand that we will need to use not detected record as a workaround to create our survey track in iMap, but are we also required to report not detected species for each survey?
The short answer is no, Sammy, you don't have, that's not a requirement of this program. And I'd also like to say that I just showed you one way. So you are not required to use iMap for, well, let me just double check my program manual because we actually went back and forth about this. Maybe we did decide in the end to require the track to be an iMap, sorry.
Well, so then she goes on to ask,
Yep.
should the track be a separate record than the not detected species record, or can they be the same?
Yeah, so, okay, so let me address these questions. So number one, in the program manual on page 17, we talk about recording data in iMapInvasives, and the data that are required in iMap are the searched area and the invasive plant information. You are not required to use iMap to show the track. So you could show that in a different program if you are, conversant in other programs, and that, frankly, might be better if that program is able to show the actual track from a GPS. I'm just showing it as a workaround for those who might not have access to that kind of a program or aren't comfortable with it. So that's one thing I want to say. And the second thing regarding not detected records, again, you're not required to record not detected records as part of the iMap required data. Remember that we do suggest in your written plans, it's optional, but we highly suggest that you include a watch list of invasive plants that you think are appropriate for the habitat, but are not present. So in effect, that little watch list is a form of a not detected record, but we are not requiring not detected records. Sammy, can you just verbally indicate whether I've answered your question sufficiently?
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Jan,
Thanks,
where should
Sam.
I
Yeah.
go next here?
So I think that answers some other questions about using other sources for the track that popped up here. Andy asks, is it a good idea to keep track of the record IDs outside of iMap?
So I personally like to write those down on my hard copy data sheets. It's not required. It's just for my own record keeping. Like if I want to quickly find, if I knew that there was giant hogweed at that site and I wanted to quickly be able to go back to that record to do something or to share it with someone, it's just useful for me. Not required. Totally up to you.
Okay. Emily asks here, do we need to provide documentation that we have received landowner permission to record the information in iMapInvasives?
The application form provides that documentation. So the landowner has to sign that form and has to indicate permission. So that is on the landowner application form.
Okay, very good. And then also, is there a way to add the comments we noted in the app in the field to the attribute table of the SHP file export from the iMap website?
I am not remembering off the top of my head what fields are included in the export. I know that as of a year ago or so, it was a very limited set of fields, and I do not remember. It sounds like maybe Emily has already tried this. If it's not included, there's no way to add it. We are working on adding more fields. This is a known thing that people have requested over and over. And in fact, there's some funding that NatureServe is using. I want to say even like as we speak to make some modifications. And I don't know the status of that. If it's not currently exported, unfortunately, there's no way to turn it on. We just have to wait for the upgrade to the tool.
Okay, that's great. Good observation. And Steve Brook asks, were you in iMap and Google Earth at the same time when making the map, or just iMap?
So for the purpose of this demonstration, Steve, I was not. But honestly, when I typically am entering data, I have two screens or cut my screen in half, and I'm in, for me, it's ArcGIS and iMap at the same time.